Okay, in this section 3-22, we're going to be looking at horizontal and vertical lines. Now, remember, in a past lesson, we briefly talked about horizontal and vertical lines, how they don't keep the same form as y equals mx plus b. They have their own form. Remember, vertical lines have the form x equals some number, and horizontal lines have the form y equals some number. All right, so how do we tell what that number is? Okay, so a vertical line is written in the form x equals a, where a represents the line's x-intercept. Okay, so like for example, if we have a vertical line, the vertical line is going to hit the x-axis. All right, so since it hits the x-axis, it has the form x equals, and it's just going to be x equals wherever it hits the x-axis. In this case, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So x equals 4 is the equation for this line. So all vertical lines have the form x equals wherever it hits the x-axis. If it hit here, then the equation would be x equals 2. If it hit here, the equation would be x equals negative 1. If it hit over here, it would be x equals negative 5, and so on. So vertical lines have the form x equals wherever it hits on the x-axis. Now, also remember the other thing we talked about. Vertical lines, the slope of a vertical line is undefined. All right. So a vertical line has a slope that is undefined slope. All right. Now let's talk about horizontal lines. Okay, horizontal line is written in the form y equals a, where a represents the line's y-intercept. So for a horizontal line is going to cross the y-axis. So therefore, since it crosses the y-axis, the form is going to be y equals wherever it crosses the y-axis. In this case, it crosses at negative 1, so the equation is going to be y equals negative 1. All right, so if it had crossed here, the equation would be y equals 2. If it crossed here, it would be y equals 4. If it crossed down here, it would be y equals negative 3, and so on. So again, horizontal lines have the form y equals wherever it crosses the y-axis. Now remember, the slope of a horizontal line is going to be 0. So the slope of a horizontal line equals 0. So these are the main characteristics that we need to remember about vertical lines and horizontal lines that will help us to answer the questions that follow. Okay, so here's a quick reminder. If the line is vertical, it intersects the x-axis, and the equation is x equals wherever it intersects. If it's horizontal, then it intersects the y-axis, and the equation is y equals wherever it hits the y. All right? So now, here's the type of questions that we're going to be asked to answer. So we have a line that's graphed here, and they want to know what is the slope of the line. Well, let's look at the line. The line is horizontal. So if it's horizontal, we know that the slope is 0. Horizontal lines have a slope that is 0. Horizontal line, slope of 0. All right? So what's the equation? Well, remember, since it's horizontal, it's going to be of the form y equals something, right? So we know the equation has to be y equals. Well, it's y equals wherever it crosses the y-axis. In this case, it crosses at negative 3. So my equation for this line is y equals negative 3. All right? So that's how we come up with the slope and the equation for the horizontal lines. Now, the next question says, what axis is the line parallel to? All right? It crosses the y-axis, so it's not parallel to that one, but it is parallel to the x-axis. This is a horizontal line. The x-axis is also a horizontal line. So what axis is the line parallel to? It's parallel to the x-axis. Okay? Now, what axis is the line perpendicular to? It's perpendicular to the y-axis. Whichever one it hits, that's the one it is perpendicular to. Okay? Now, let's try another one of the same type. Okay, we have another line here. We want to know its slope. This time we have a vertical line, and we know the slope of a vertical line is undefined. Okay, vertical line, slope is undefined. All right, so what's the equation for this vertical line? Well, let's see. First of all, what axis does it cross? It crosses the x-axis, so we know it's going to be x equals something. And so where does it cross? It crosses at -1, 2, 3, -4. So x equals -4 is the correct equation for this particular line. All right. Now, what axis is the line parallel to? It's going the same direction or parallel to the y-axis. And what axis is it perpendicular to? It crosses the x-axis. All right. So my line is vertical. The x-axis is horizontal. Horizontal and vertical lines are perpendicular to each other. So that's how we would go about answering these types of questions. And so we have several more that we want to look at here. Okay, so let's try the next graph. So the next graph that I have is right here, and it is a vertical line. So if it's a vertical line, we know the slope is undefined. We'll write that in first. Okay, slope is undefined. Now, we need to write out the equation for this particular line. And again, since it hits the x-axis, my equation is going to be x equals, and it hits at 2, so the equation is going to be x equals 2. Okay? What axis is the line parallel to? Okay, it's going the same direction, or it's going to be parallel to the y-axis. Okay? What axis is the line perpendicular to? It crosses or is perpendicular to the x-axis. All right, so the more you practice these, the easier it will get for you, and the more comfortable you'll get with writing these things out. Let's try the next one, see what we got. Okay, so now we have a horizontal line, right, and we want to know the slope of that horizontal line. We know the slope of a horizontal line is 0. The equation, since it crosses the y-axis, is going to be y equals wherever it crosses. In this case, it crosses at y equals 1. So y equals 1 is going to be the equation. What axis is the line parallel to? Well, it's parallel to the x-axis. And let's see. Yep, so my x-axis is here. Parallel to the x-axis. Okay. And which axis is it perpendicular to? It's going to be perpendicular to the y-axis. All right. Okay, a couple more that we want to try here. So in this one, it's a little bit different. In the other ones, they gave me the line on the graph. Okay, on this one, he does not give me the line on the graph. It just tells me x equals 4 is the equation. Okay, so we want to graph it first. Okay, so x equals 4. So where is 4 on the x? 1, 2, 3, 4. There is 4 on the x-axis. And so here is my line. It's going to be a vertical line through 4 on the x-axis. Okay, so remember, x equals equations are going to be vertical lines. Okay, so now based on this, now that I've graphed it and I have the equation, okay, I can go ahead now and answer the rest of the questions. What is the slope of the line? Vertical line, undefined. Okay. What axis is it parallel to? It's parallel to the y-axis. What axis is it perpendicular to? It is perpendicular to the x-axis. Okay. Now, here's the last question. It says, which points does x equals 4 go through? Okay, so which point does x equal 4 go through? That's what we want to know. So it should be one point that we can look at, okay, and say that this goes through. All right, so if the equation is x equals 4, okay, if I were to look at these points on the graph, and I would be able to determine which one of these is on the line. So in other words, which point does this go through? So let's check it. This one, 0, 4. So 0 and up by 4, okay, it doesn't go through that one. 0, -4, the next one, it doesn't go through that one. 4, -6, over 4, down 6, it does go through that one. And then -4 and up 6, it does not go through. Now, there's an easier way to check this. You don't have to go through that every time. if the equation is x equals 4, right? If the equation is x equals 4, then it goes through the point that has 4 as the x-coordinate. Okay? If it has 4 as the x-coordinate, then you know that x equals 4 goes through that point. All right, so let's try another one. Okay, same idea. So now we've got y equals 2 that we're going to have to end up graphing. All right, so let's find 2 on the y-axis. Here it is. Okay, so we have a horizontal line that goes through that point. So there's the graph of y equals 2. Okay, so now that we have the graph drawn in, we can answer the other questions. What is the slope of that line? That would be a horizontal line with a slope of 0. What axis is it parallel to? It's parallel to the x-axis. All right, what axis is it perpendicular to? It crosses the y-axis. Okay, and which point does y equals 2 go through? All right, so again, I could check these points one at a time. So I go over 2 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. That point's not on the line. Negative 2, 0. That point is not on the line. Okay. Negative 1 up 2. That point is on the line. And then 0, negative 2. That point is not on the line. But like I've told you before on the other problem, all we have to do now is if it's y equals 2, then a point on the line would be any point that has 2 as the y-coordinate. So the y-coordinate of 2, that's going to be your right answer right there. All right, so you can use these notes now to help you complete the quiz that is going to be in Canvas.